So welcome everybody to another session of Presenting Our Presence. Presenting Our Presence is a vodcast that's hosted by the University of Alberta, and it amplifies the amazing work of Indigenous folk that work here. My name is Florence Glanfield. I'm one of the co-hosts, a citizen of the Métis Nation of Alberta, and I am joined today by my co-host MorningStar Willier and our special guest, and you'll get to hear an introduction from that guest soon.
Thank you, Florence. Hi, Danni. I'm MorningStar. We went to school together. I've been at the U of A for almost 10 years now, which is crazy to say and to think about, but it's been a great place to be. It's really helped me flourish into myself, and it's been wonderful to witness you flourish into yourself over the years as well. I'm originally from Sucker Creek First Nation, but Edmonton's been my home for over 10 years, and it's been great. So I'll pass it on to you, and you can introduce yourself in whichever way you feel comfortable.
Yes, thank you, Morningstar, and thank you, Florence, for the invitation to speak and to share with you today. So, Ani Buju Gishikan Gishikan Nadishnakaz Amusabing Nadonji. Dansika Gisika Gisik Nadisnagasan Mantusipi Nidostrin Muskego Signitayan Anut. So, hello, everybody. My name is Danni Okemaw. I'm from Barons River and God's River First Nation in Treaty 5 territory. I was born and raised in Winnipeg for the first 15 years of my life, and then I moved to Edmonton for the remainder 15 years or 16 years of my life. So I moved from one big Métis city to the next big Métis city because Winnipeg has the highest Indigenous population and Edmonton is number 2. I currently work at the Faculty of Native Studies as a community engagement and alumni relations coordinator. I'm also a master's student at the Faculty of Native Studies, and I am also the co-founder of an Indigenous dance program called Namito Dan. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to kind of share a little bit of my journey with the U of A, and yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you, Danni, and thank you so much for the use of the languages that you are learning, and it just always makes my heart feel good when I hear language. And we'd love to know, as we start off this conversation, what brought you into the current role that you have at the University of Alberta, and how is it that became an interest for you?
I would say that in terms of how I got into community and alumni relations, I think community gatherings has always been an interest of mine, and it's always been a passion of mine to attend. So I would say that it started with the Native Studies program. There were a lot of events that, as Indigenous Faculty of Native Studies students, that brought us together, like the Tea and Bannock, the MMIW March, which those were happening 2017, 18, 19. A lot of the classes that myself and Morningstar attended, we did a lot of sharing circles, talking circles. There were different panels and conferences. So, I saw the power of connection between Indigenous students, alumni, and community, and that's what really drawn me in, as well as being a powwow dancer my entire life. And so I've, ever since I was 3 years old, I knew what community feels like and that relationship with the drum and the dancers and the people and the singers and the MC, and it's always made me feel 100% when I'm in community, or whether that's at a gathering, whether that's at a powwow, whether that's at a panel at U of A. I was always drawn to that sense of connection, belonging, and relation.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And as you think about your time, not only as a student, but I love how the that narrative weaves through who you are as a human being, right? And the relationality, the kinship, the connection to music. So powerful. So, what does a day look like in your work of community engagement and alumni relations?
What does a really good day? Well, every day is a good day, but I get here early in the morning, I check those, urgent emails, and then right now we're juggling different events. So I'm making sure as well, it's been very important to me to make sure what other faculties, um, what other departments or programs, making sure that, we know what events are happening. And so it's always in constant communication, whether that's constant communication with ATEP, with First Peoples House, with the Faculty of Arts Indigenous Spaces. It's that ongoing connection and attending events and meetings. So we're in the process right now of doing a lot of meetings for the orientation week, which is next week. We got Tawau, we got our undergrad orientation, we got our grad orientation. And then as well, we have these special events that are coming up that will be, there's one really cool one. I say cool, but like it's a continuance of our Indigenous fashion events that we've been having online and in person. And so we're gearing up for that final phase. And so it's been a lot of planning. So it's pretty much a lot of attending and a lot of planning. So back and forth. So that's pretty much, and it's things that I love doing, right? I love being able to connect. I love being able to also support other other events that are happening, whether that's Indigenous Students Union, putting on an event, or Faculty of Arts, having Stu and Bannock, or if it's at Tuau, making sure that we're keeping those connections at the Faculty of Native Studies and supporting other people's events and gatherings.
Thank you. Now, I know Morningstar has wonders too. So, Morningstar, I invite you to jump in with your wonders. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Yeah, I'm actually really curious about like Nemotaten. Like, could you tell me more about that and how does that fit in with your community engagement? And was that kind of just like a side passion project? Is it something you kind of just stumbled upon? Like just hearing about your passion for dance and how it's something that you've been doing your entire life and how much community has been surrounding that. And now, obviously, how much community and kinship takes part in your life. I'm just really interested in the integration of all that through this program.
Yes, how much time do you have? I could talk about it for hours. No. So Namito Dan means let's dance in Cree. Namito Dan was created on U of A campus at First People's House at the Round Table. They don't have the Round Table anymore, but I know that in their new building, they're gonna bring that table back, hopefully. And Namito Dan was created in conversation with another Indigenous dancer named Tiger Belrose. And Tiger Belrose was a newer dancer. He was taking a lot of classes, and we connected because our passion and our love for dance. And we had conversations on like what would an Indigenous dance program look to you and for us? And what do we need out of that? And so we shared stories of, sometimes feeling isolated as being the only Indigenous dancer in a class or in a program. And so it really came from us amalgamating our studies. So I am a Native Studies focused um, I was in a Native Studies focused program. He was in a sociology based program. And so we were at the same time studying what does community-based community initiatives look like that support indigeneity, that support and validate our teachings, cultures, and language. How do we put that into a dance program? And so that's been our main focus. I think what sets us apart from other dance companies is that we're in this phase right now of focusing on community healing, intergenerational healing, and building that kinship, as opposed to creating artistic pieces, which that could be a possibility. But right now, we're looking at the reality of our communities, and we're looking at the reality of, people in our generation that are, that are having a hard time with addictions, that are having a hard time with intergenerational trauma. And we had a lot of discussions with the elders at First People's House, Elsie and Francis, and me and Tiger would share with them this program that we wanted. And this was like way back in 2018, 19. And it was the events of when the Kamloops children were found in 2021, which was a very difficult time across Turtle Island. And it was, those mentors that pushed us. You guys need to push this program out right now. We need to bring that light energy. And so this program was born from wanting to bring light energy and wanting to bring like good energy that comes from movement, right? Because in our program, we believe that movement is healing, movement is medicine, and just being able to be in a class where we're just there to have fun, we're just there to move our body in a good way, and to be grateful that we're able to, have fun with our friends and connect with the music, whether if it's a powwow style or if it's like a contemporary style, whether if it's more a ballet style. And so I've been very we've been very grateful that we will be continuing on with our fifth year of classes starting in October. And we just finished a mentorship program as well called Wakotuan. So we've been mentoring five different dancers across the community to start their own classes. So it's been that influence of our own research, of our own programs, of looking at other community-based, indigenous-based research programs that center on healing. And when it comes to dance, so I've been dancing my entire life. I was initiated at 3 years old as a jingle dress dancer, and I also started ballet at 3 years old. And so when my mom was able to get her master's of education around the time when I think I was 7 or 8, I was able to take way more dance classes because that's what I wanted. Unfortunately, before that, I was only able to take one at a time. But I really felt a connection in the dance studio, and that's what I wanted to do my entire life. Like I was just dead set on I'm just going to be a dancer my entire life. And so as time went on, I kept on getting more and more training. I had these big dreams of going to New York and going to Toronto to go and train. And then it became when I was around 17 to 18 years old, I was starting to audition for these companies, these faraway companies, and I was able to live in Queens, New York for a couple of months and live in Santa Fe, New Mexico to train with Indigenous dance company as well as visit compete in Montreal and San Diego. I was able to do what my younger self wanted to do, but also at the same time, I missed my people. Because when I was in those, amazing places that I wanted to be at, I was missing my people and I was missing in terms of my community and seeing, just seeing another Indigenous person was, a big thing for me when I was out in California or out in New York. And so, I was starting to, have these dreams of like, how can I continue on with this love for dance? And so I wasn't very sure around that time. I actually got injured, and I got injured in different places in my feet and my legs. And I was like, oh no, like all I did from this point was dance. Like my parents share stories of me of just going to school on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because I was just so focused on training for dance. That was like the goal. And then once I got injured and I I was told by a physiotherapist and a doctor that you're not going to be able to dance in that capacity again. So I was very heartbroken at that time. And at the same time, that was when I Don't Know More was happening at the exact same time. And so I had all these questions like, what's going on? How come no one's telling me anything, right? And I kept on asking, like, what is I Don't Know More? I ended up upgrading at Center High and it took Ab Studies 30. And I was starting to understand um, like what was going on. And even growing up Winnipeg, I had a lot of questions growing up, but because of people around me were going through intergenerational trauma and intergenerational healing, it was kind of a sensitive topic to bring up. So I just kind of like kept my mouth shut. I just kind of just went forward. And so once I took that Ab Studies 30, I was like, oh, like I really like this. I want to know more. And so that's when I applied for a Faculty of Native Studies. And it was kind of like my backup plan, but it was really a new interest to me. And learning more about what has happened in the past has actually been incredibly healing for me. And so the more classes that we were taking, me and Morningstar in our first year, second year, third year, um, I started to get this incredible like urge to dance again, but I didn't know how. I wasn't able to do the 9 to 4 training days anymore. I wasn't able to do the 3 hour ballet classes anymore. And so that's when I started talking a lot to Francis and Elsie, and they started to, talk to me with support that maybe this is your time to start facilitating. Maybe this is your time to start organizing. And so I really took their words seriously. And then that's when I organized my first event for the Faculty of Native Studies, which was in 2019 or 2020, and it was the last MMIW 2SG walk. And so that was my first time I ever organized anything, and bringing community together in that way was really meaningful to me because I do have 3 family members who are part of MMIW 2SG. And so being able to facilitate that event really opened that gateway for me to support community in events. And then came in that dance. So I was like, I could do that event. I could do something similar with dance. And so in a very short version, like I could talk about this for longer, but that's how I amalgamated the two. So just my own experience being in dance, that injury, going into Native studies, and really finding that passion for Indigenous research and Indigenous, academia, and reading, these brilliant minds and these brilliant teachings really healed me, and it made me want to do the same thing for our dance community. So,
Thank you, Danny. I could probably listen to you talk all day. Genuinely, you're such a
I could probably
phenomenal
go.
storyteller, and everything just makes sense as you speak. Um, but from the first thing that I kind of wanted to say was, I'm so sorry for your losses, and unfortunately, that's a loss a lot of us carry, and it's really disheartening. And the fact that you organized that event means a lot to me and everyone else within the community, especially because it was so well done. But one thing I also really want to talk about is you've been dancing majority of your life, if not your whole life, truly. And I'm really curious as to how that, like, what was that feeling that you had when you danced? I'm really curious as to kind of like how you felt that within your body, maybe the sensations, anything of sorts, whether it was a mind or just an actual physical feeling. And is that something you have felt similar to when it comes to facilitating and organizing either community events or your dance program, or just facilitating a class and dancing yourself with these people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when it comes to dance, so at all times of the day, there's so many thoughts going on in my head. There's like one conversation. I'm pretty sure there's an ADHD diagnosis coming, but I've been riding the waves and that's fine. And so when I dance, whether that's um contemporary hip hop, jingle dress, fancy shawl, it just feels aligned. My body, my spirit, and my heart feel aligned and it feels quiet. And I've had that feeling since I was a little girl. Like I could finally think clearly. And so I've been chasing that feeling ever since I was small and just getting that tiny feeling of feeling at ease, feeling supported, feeling loved, all within, my own body and my own mind and my own spirit. And so there are a lot of, gatherings, events, and dance classes that I've attended, and a lot of the facilitators I took notes from, like in my head. And I have a couple of, people who facilitated really well events. One event that I remember attending a long time ago that made me think of that MMIW 2SG event. So when I think I was 13 or maybe 14 years old or 12, this was the beginning in Winnipeg when people were starting to create events around TRC and Indian residential schools. And I attended one of Wob Canoe's first events. And so Wob Canoe and my sister, they went, I believe they were in Head Start together. His wife's family and my mom's family, we all kind of know each other. And to see him take initiative and create an event, this was one of the first ones too. And seeing he was a youth at the time. He must have been like 20 years old or something. And to see him take that on and create an event, I think it was like in a little hall at the time. Seeing a younger person take that initiative on something so important was really impactful to me. Even being in dance classes and being spending time with dance teachers who really, really um supported you, right? I think sometimes when I came into the dance class, there were a lot of things going on in terms of growing up in Winnipeg and having to grow up fast and having to experience, what we experience as Indigenous youth growing up in an urban setting, that it was so affected by intergenerational trauma. And I know that some of my teachers could see it in my face. And some of them really supported me. Some of them really, really gave me some good advice. Some of them really wanted for us to feel at home. And I remember a couple of them would tell me that when you're here, you're at home. We take care of you. And whatever you want to share with us is whatever you want to share with us. And so I took little things from people, and even at the Faculty of Native Studies, right? Savage Bears classes, Kim Tall Bears classes, you know, having that experience of being with, you know, knowledge keepers and, really well-known and also grassroots people who create spaces where you're welcome and where you're supported. And so those are the two main things, or many main things that come into my mind, is that I want to honor what was given to me. So I'm going to bring it back into the community when it's my turn to facilitate. I didn't expect to facilitate at this young of age. I thought I'd be a little bit older, but I think I just walked into it one day. Actually, there was a Native Studies Student Association meeting, and I knew there were some snacks downstairs, and I was kind of hungry. So I just walked in, and they're like, "Hey, Danny, do you want to organize the MMIW TSG walk?" And I was like, "I guess so, right?" Like, I was actually there for just visiting and just snacks, but it just ended up happening, and um. I have a lot of, discussions with my mentors, and they say that once you're asked to do those things, it's really good to take initiative. And I'm glad I did, because at the beginning of I guess my academic journey, first, second, third year, I was really shy. Like I would just walk in and walk out, and I think, once a little bit blossomed with in terms of my you know, in terms of being comfortable at events, I took that initiative and I said, okay, I will do that. I will do that for community, because I I remember how impacted I was when I seen, Wab Canoe with one of the first TRC community grassroots events in Winnipeg. And so I want to honor that experience by also hopefully at at that same initiative, create that event here at U of A, or the dance program as well.
You talk about being a master's student as well. Now we're in a master's program.
Yeah.
And given how you've just so beautifully described the role of dance and the influences in your living, how are you making sense of your thinking around your own graduate work then now, and what role, if any, does dance come into your graduate work?
Yeah, so it actually does intertwine. It's a part of my thesis, actually. So my thesis is, how does Indigenous dance and movement engage in intergenerational healing, community, and language revitalization? And so I will be working with people who have been affected by different systems, so specifically carceral spaces. And so this idea came about in one of my Native Studies classes. I believe it was Indigenous prison writing. It was an online class. Maybe I think maybe MorningStar was a part of it. This was in COVID, so it was all online. And we watched a film called Out of State by Kiera Lacey. And this film is about a certain institution, prison institution in Arizona, in which there are only Native Hawaiians there. So they get flown there and it's only them there. And there was, a huge cultural program that they have there, that in which they explore their traditional hula, not the tourist hula, the real generational hula, generational songs, languages, what it means in their culture and perspective of being, a man and being that role, and seeing them blossom and finding themselves in their culture. And I asked my professor Nancy if I can be a research assistant and explore, okay, that's happening there, but what's happening around Turtle Island? And so for that summer, I was looking around. And so, they're in my experience of being in community, I find that our culture, it is kind of like we're all on our own little islands, but we're brushing up against each other sometimes, right? We have our hand games, we have our powwow, we have, at the center and the most important, our ceremonies, our songs, our language, but we have these different things that, our people have, um, you know, drawn themselves to. But in terms of programming, in terms of, what's out there for people to heal themselves, I didn't find what was shown in the film, which was a little bit of a heartbreak to me because, I've had family members who are in and out the system, and I wish that they can experience that type of experience, right? And so pretty much my master's research will be exploring why dance and movement is so important to healing, because when I was going through the different academic articles, I could only find maybe on top of maybe, I had to really get really specific on the U of A library research tool because there's it's very limited. And I think a lot of us who are doing Indigenous academic research in Indigenous thinking and dance, we all know each other. And, there should be more of us, right? And so it's really important to when we think of healing, first of all, when we think of healing, we're not broken and we don't need to be healed. We don't need to be cured. That Western thinking that healing means you're broken, I'm I don't want to center my research in that. Healing, an Indigenous perspective in my, Anishinaabe and Swampy Cree perspective is that we are just getting closer and closer to what our ancestors and knowledge keepers wanted us to be. So when you think of healing, healing could be crying, healing could be laughing, healing could be finding your passion in painting, in dancing, in beading, in maybe your passion is, raising children. Maybe your passion is being out on the land and teaching our children, how to pick berries. It's just us getting closer and closer to what our ancestors wanted us to be. And so, how does that engage with dance? And so, it's really funny that you asked that. That yeah, my master's research does align with it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll turn it back to Morningstar. And I needed to ask that because I was so curious. I didn't realize you were doing a master's thesis right now. So this is very exciting. And I look forward to reading your work, Danny. Morningstar, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Danny, I love how you have taken all of these components that bring you so much joy and happiness and your own healing and have truly made it your life. Like, that is such a skill, and that is something to be so proud of. And that is something I am proud of you for, because that's phenomenal. Like, that's the whole point of why we're doing this, why, as Indigenous people, we pursue post-secondary, like all of these to create these types of experiences for ourselves and those who are coming after us. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking that space, and thank you for creating that space.
Yes, for sure.
But in a more lighthearted sense, how do you approach, and speaking for myself here, how do you approach people who are interested in healing but have no ability to dance?
I think when it comes to dance, you have to, and of course, this important word, decolonize your thinking. Because when it comes to movement, in terms of, I'm sorry to get all academic, by the way,
No, it's
but
great. Share your knowledge.
when we think of movement and we think of fitness and wellness, that Western perspective really has overtaken our brains. And I always share in our dance classes that there, sometimes, we do have students, sometimes half that are like, I don't dance, like I'm not a dancer, I'm not coordinated. But then I say, but your ancestors were physical people. You're, you know, all of us come from people who are out on the land. All of us as Indigenous, actually everybody, you know, us as Indigenous people, we have great grandmas, grandmothers, grandfathers who are out on the land, who are running, who are walking, we're doing physical activities. And if you think about it that way, when it comes to dance, we are simply moving our body. In an indigenous perspective of dance, we are moving our body to be grateful and moving our body to connect with ourselves, right? And so I always tell people that I'm like, well, your ancestors were physical people, so we're physical people, and we just have to tap into that. And so I always tell our students or participants as well too that like there wasn't any Uber in in the 1800s or 1900s. There was no skip the dishes. So it's about challenging yourself, but also putting in those good thoughts. And we also bring in the language. So sometimes when we're doing a routine and I'm seeing some people like kind of like their heads are starting to, I could feel their body language like, and I tell them, when you're dancing or when you're about to dance, speak to yourself in the language and speak to yourself, say agomemo over and over, and you'll be surprised with how far you can take that physical ability to connect. Because in our program, it's not about the technique, it's not about how many turns you can do, it's not about how high you can jump. It's just about connecting with the music, with your ancestors, with the language, and with each other. And that's what separates us from different dance companies where they want you to spin 7 times and do a jump, right? And that's amazing. But I think what our community needs is that healing and it needs that connection. So that's what I would tell you. Then we would do it together.
Thank you. That was very nice and very good advice. And you are so right in the sense that we have to decolonize our mind in the sense of just even movement. And it's so interesting how that comes into play
Hmm.
in everyday society and everyday life as Indigenous people. Thank you, Dan.
I'm conscious of the time and how we are near the end of our time together already. Um, but, and Danny, I wondered if you might just bring us to some kind of closing comments because we've talked about all the beautiful work you're doing. What's an upcoming project or activity that you're thinking about right now that you would like to share or are able to share with our audience?
You don't have to share all your secrets.
Okay, I'll share some. So, just in a professional, kind of way, some upcoming projects I have professionally is just continuing alumni programming for the Faculty of Native Studies. And so we have a really exciting event that's happening in November. And again, I shared earlier that it's a continuance of the Indigenous Fashion and Resilience and Joy event. So we're going to have an in-person event happening in November. It's happening, I could share that, but we're going to be having a community gathering, which it's not just a Faculty of Native Studies event, it's a U of A even out community where we will celebrate Indigenous fashion and like what does that mean? And so we talk a lot about how, Indian residential schools really affected, how we dress ourselves and how Indigenous artisans, Indigenous fashion designers are taking their traditional designs and putting it on their own lines and putting it on their own pieces. And we're going to be celebrating those people in November. So I hope, I will invite both of you to come out. We're very excited about that. I guess some personal things that are coming up. We're starting the Mitotan classes again. We're meeting monthly starting in October. We'll have both the traditional powwow styles and we'll be having some contemporary styles, so like hip hop and ballet. And something really amazing that I just finished doing was being a part of a documentary called Under the Arbor. And so myself and a couple others were being followed on our journey on the Powwow Trail. And so I have a little bit of time in there where I talk about my journey and coming back to Powwow. And so it was really important for me to share that experience of a dancer coming back to the circle. And so that's called Under the Arbor. It's on CBC Gem. You can watch it now. And so and again, yeah, I'm just getting getting ready to for another semester in my master's program. And so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, thanks so much, Danny, for joining us today. I look forward to the Papa audience learning all about the amazing you. And we are so grateful for you to share this time in this space with us. And I'm going to invite Morningstar to say a few closing words, and then we'll give you the last words in this version, in this episode of Presenting Our Presence. Thank you again with much gratitude. And I'm going to try my Cree Kinanaskamotin.
Yes, thank you, Danny. Truly, this was just a wonderful conversation to kind of really hear and listen to your journey and just hear where you are now and how much more you're going to be able to be doing and the much bigger impact you just keep building on. I am excited to watch that documentary. I saw the trailer for it a while ago. I didn't know it was out completely yet, so I know what I'm going to be doing this evening. So thank you for that. And it's honestly just a pleasure to know you personally, as well as to be able to talk to you on this podcast. And thank you, Florence, for inviting me. I've been having such a great time. Thank you. I'll pass it over to you now.
Yes. Hi hi Ekosani Miigwech for inviting me to share my story. You know, U of A has brought me a lot and it has taught me a lot as well. And I'm glad that I've grown and blossomed here and was supported by, different programs and departments here. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing if it wasn't for the different profs, the different advisors, the different knowledge keepers. It's built me into the person that I am today, and I say that with the most, humble and kind heart. There was some challenging times, right? There were times when one time I had two exams in one day and it was very icy in Main Quad here, and I did fall, and thankfully I had a really big backpack and, and I was laying there and there were some really, some very tough times like that where I was like, I don't think I could do this anymore. Like, I don't know if I can finish my degree. Times like that, but I'm glad I stuck it out because, I wouldn't have these amazing opportunities that I have now. I'm glad I stuck it out. I'm glad that I got back up and made quad there and just kept going and was like I literally fell there and there's people around me. They're like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, just let me sit here for 2 minutes." And then I got back up and I ran to my exam and I finished it. And so I'm glad but yeah, I'm very appreciative and I just want to, share that, value that connection, value visiting. I know that we have a lot of ways to connect on our phones and computers and email, but like take initiative and go to those community events and um visit with people. Visiting is medicine, and I think that's what really carried me through. And just supporting people's events is so important too. And just sometimes you don't even need to talk to anybody. You just need to kind of sit there and just engage in that visiting. It's so important. But yeah, I think that's all that I have to say. So, Gichimi Gwech, hi hi.